Hello and welcome to the Star Wars Guys YouTube channel where the Force is family. I am Master Paul, joined once again by Phil McCracken and Nate, and we are back
Morning.
with more Animation Friday. This is kind of a continuation of what we were talking about last night. So, as again, sort of a recap, last night was intended to be a complete review of Clone Wars Season 7, but due to some logistical reasons, we were only able to get the Bad Batch arc and the Martez sisters arc done. So tonight, we're talking about the final arc of the Clone Wars, which is the Siege of Mandalore and Order 66. But before we get into that, real quick, let me say hello to Leia Rose and Pod Racing Palpatine in the chat. And Nate, since we have a little bit of time before Michael gets in here, because once Michael gets in here, I'm going to give him the floor since he has a very limited amount of time. But while we're waiting on Michael, would you care to really quick shoot on the Bad Batch arc and the Martez sisters arc, Nate?
So I'd say probably out of the entire series, the Bad Batch arc was probably my favorite for season 7, as well, it introduced me to probably my favorite clone squad. Well, setting aside the rookies,
Of course.
but I thought it was pretty well put together for that arc. I just wish that they would have kept the one that they had from the deleted scenes involving a certain senator from Naboo. I think we all know it. If you have, no, YouTube might not like us pulling up that picture, but I thought that it would have been a nice homage to the old school.
Oh wait, you talking
Uh,
about the nose art of Padme?
yes,
We
the
should
nose art
we
on
showed
there.
that last night.
Oh, you
Yeah.
showed that last night. Oh,
The whole scene.
And I said last night that you would be saying exactly what you were saying, Nate. And I totally 100% agree. They should have left that scene in there.
Hmm. Yeah.
yes, they definitely should have, and it would add that much more to Anakin's anxiety by also showing him with the conversation with Padme, especially so his anger and frustration with it. Another really big important part of it I would go with is I think it was right that everyone mistrusted Echo except for Rex, because here it is, no one's seen, he's been AWOL for several months, I'm gonna guess, and on top of it, he's been actively helping the enemy.
Hmm. Real quick, DJ Ronnie G says, I like the old Intel Inside sticker.
Unfortunately, I don't have much of a choice into the Intel logo option. That's just kind of what happens when the privacy shutter is activated on my camera, because it actually has a hardware disconnect.
Of course.
As far as the Martez sisters goes, it makes me wish that we would have got the game 1313,
Okay.
because it gave us an opportunity to kind of look at the underworld and the dark side of things, and from a legal standpoint, not necessarily from force standpoint.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I think what most people's complaints regarding the arc as a whole, aside from, the Martez sisters themselves, and this was something that Crit and I and Phil, of course, had a pretty in-depth discussion about, was the fact that why are we getting this arc when we could have gotten something more impactful that definitively pointed more to Revenge of the Sith? Like, for example, the Dark Disciple arc, the Utapau arc, which is on YouTube, guys. You can go and watch it if you wanted, and things like that.
Yeah, I do agree that literally any one of those arcs would have been better. And personally, I would have wanted the Utapau, yeah, the Utapau arc,
Mhm.
because they're going in search of a giant kyber crystal, which, of course, as we see in the ending scenes of Revenge of the Sith, we're already seeing a orbital battle station coming about.
Yes.
Though part of me thinks the reason why they chose not to use the Utapau arc is because, as we'll learn later on in Rebels, there is an arc involving giant kyber crystals and Saw Gerrera.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely be looking at that when it comes time to talk Rebels. So overall, it sounds like your thoughts are more or less consistent that to what we were talking about last night. So now that we're on the same page, let's go ahead and get into the first thing that we're talking about tonight, and that is the final arc of the Clone Wars, being the Siege of Mandalore slash Order 66. Now, overall, as always, what did you guys think of this arc? Real
I
quick, we
would.
got someone else popping in here. Shockwave, Guardian of Cybertron. What's
Hmm.
up?
Mhm. I guess I'm just on orders from Lord Megatron, standing by.
That's fine. So, anyways, for real, how you doing, Michael?
I'm doing fine.
That's good. So, I understand that you have a little bit of a limited time to be here with us, so I'm going to actually slip you up into my spots, and for as long as you have here, the floor is yours. We were just about to start talking about the Siege of Mandalore, the final 4 episodes of Clone Wars.
Okay, well, I guess we can go ahead and start there, just kind of where everything sort of left off, and I can give my thoughts on it as we sort of brisk through this, because I do want to talk about Transformers too. But
Okay, yeah,
I guess let's first address the elephant in the room being a certain kind of meme of war crimes, shall we?
yes. One of Nate's favorite things to bring up about this show. So, the this is basically this is not just a four-parter arc. This is literally a big episode put into 4 parts. And part 1 starts with Anakin and Obi-Wan and the 212th and 501st engaged in this one battle on Yelbara.
Mm-hmm.
And what does Anakin do the moment that he arrives on the scene?
He false surrenders.
He does a false surrender, which is a war crime according to the Geneva Convention.
Yes. It's not even a ruse. Well, technically it's a ruse of war, but it's not exactly a good one. It's like putting on the chaplain's head cover or the medic's armband.
Yeah, but then again, I'm sure somebody's gonna take aim at one of those guys.
Yep. You're not supposed to shoot anybody marked with a red cross, regardless of what uniform they're in. That's a
True,
major one.
Yeah.
But
but I don't think Charlie plays by
false
those rules.
surrender. Another let's add a little bit to that.
Mm-hmm.
You are limited by the person or the force that is demanding your surrender. Like they'll give you have 2 hours. After them 2 hours, if you do not comply to this surrender, it's considered a refusal of surrender. At
Mm-hmm.
that point, all right, let's just say it this way: it's happened even in our Civil War, and
Mm-hmm.
it turned out bloody. If you refuse to surrender, technically, once battle recommences, soldiers really do not have to acknowledge hands up
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
you are giving that chance to surrender. Any army is supposed to give them a chance to surrender. When you refuse to surrender, military personnel are then put in extremely more harm's way. Now, civilians are different. You're not supposed to mess with civilians. But let's just say
Charlie doesn't play by our rules sometimes.
Well, I'll try and make it quick,
One
Paul.
way.
Let's just say the Delaware militia goes up against the Virginia militia, and the Virginia militia demands the Delaware militia to surrender. You give them 2 hours, they don't comply, then it's deals off. Deals off at that point. Battle reconsumes, and it looks like the Virginians are going to take out the Delaware militia. Let's say a group of them try to surrender, and maybe people are quick with the gun, so to speak. You see it on some movies. You know, you technically have to honor in some degree hands up, but not necessarily after in this. It's a gray area. Let's just say that it's a gray area.
Yeah. Now, there's actually something I wanted to ask you, Phil, and that's something that you had brought up yesterday, because I kind of was caught in the middle of it, and PJ and I had talked about it off stream, but you had mentioned that the whole reason that they did a season 7 of Clone Wars was because Disney was in between a rock and a hard place, let's just say.
Yes.
I was just wondering kind of what you meant by that, and if you want to elaborate.
Okay. If you put yourself in the mindset, especially after, let's say, the rise of Skywalker, you put yourself in at that time that up until the point, yeah, Mandalore was, I'm not Mandalore, the Mandalorian, yeah, the show was getting a little bit popular, but it's right before the big overhypeness of Luke returning. They really didn't have anything to go for it. So I think the Luke coming back on the last episode of the Mandalorian, and the proposition of bringing the Clone Wars. Let's face it, everybody loved the series. I think they knew that this was something to. I don't want to say the bait on the fishing line, but to me it was how much. If you're sitting there and you're Disney, what would be the 3 things you would want to bring to get people back? Luke Skywalker, 1. This right here, 2. And then remember, there was even talk before we even had a confirmation. Oh, we're going to get a Boba Fett series.
Yeah.
Everybody was hyped. So we got 2 of them. And, you know, the Luke scene, you can take it for what you want. I liked it, but I said it at the time, it was don't get your hypes up, but there's only a couple minutes in there, and it was only 1 episode. But when they announced this, if you remember seeing it, when they announced it at what is it, the Star Wars Comic Con, whatever you call it,
Star Wars Celebration.
When they announced they were bringing season 7 back, everybody, I don't care if you liked what was Star Wars were going and didn't like it,
everyone flipped the lid.
It went crazy. And honestly, I thought they were going to take the unfinished ones and add some new ones, but I didn't expect they were going to ignore the unfinished ones, which I think it was a mistake. But
yeah,
like I said, I think this was Disney's way to try to get some of the people, maybe not all, but most of the people to come back. And it did succeed for a bit. It did succeed. So,
yeah, I gotta see what you're going for, Phil, and it does make sense because even though I will always stand on the hill of how Rise of Skywalker was a far better movie than The Last Jedi, because it is, even though we had that scene of I'm all the Jedi. Really, the whole thing that really killed it for Rise of Skywalker was that it was trying to fix the mistakes of Last Jedi, it seemed, where it sort of retconned itself without saying that it was a retcon.
Agreed.
Like,
and I think if let's say the Last Jedi, not the Last Jedi, but the Rise of Skywalker did decent, and Mandalorian or the Mandalorian,
it's okay.
Let's just say even before we got the Luke Skywalker episode, let's say it was a little bit more popular than what it was. I
Mhm.
don't think they would ever announce a season 7 of Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I think it was an emergency plug-in.
Yeah, like something that they've been keeping on the shelf
Mm,
just in case.
yep.
I could kind of see that.
Yeah. So, anyways, how are you today, guitarist?
Ian, what's up?
Ian, yep.
Pretty good. What are y'all up to?
We
Aside
are-
from
Nothing
just
much.
sitting here bashing Disney.
Oh,
We are
nothing
talking
much.
the final 4 episodes of the Clone Wars, and then afterwards we're going to talk some Transformers stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll hang around for the Clone Wars stuff.
All right,
I'm-
That's
nice.
fine.
It's been forever and a day since I've seen any animated Transformers, so I can't be of much help there.
Yeah, it's
I
okay.
gotcha.
Now, while we're on the topic, let's bring in a conspiracy theorist, shall we? Let's bring in that one scene from. Let's see. For those looking for work at Darth News. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, let's bring in a conspiracy theory, shall we?
Is this the one that you and I had talked about earlier?
Yes.
I have
Is
the
it-
clip.
Because I just want people to talk about it because it's
Let me
interesting.
bring this in.
Because the timing is interesting.
So we see what I'm not going to read it out loud, but we see what the title here is, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Yep.
let's see what this is. A 30-second clip. Credit to Sam Horowitz, but let's see what he has to say here.
Disney changed Star Wars due to COVID-19. They didn't want to break social distancing. Watch this beautiful scene in Clone Wars where Anakin gives Ahsoka her brand new lightsabers. Check how ridiculous this is. Watch this. Look how far apart they're standing from each other, more than 6 feet. Then look what she says here.
Good luck.
Good luck. You were supposed to hug each other. You were supposed to hug.
So, what did you guys think about that?
So, lots of problems with that. First of all, if I hand you something, PJ, if we're just standing there talking and I hand you something, I'm extending my arm all the way out like it looked like they were.
Mhm.
My arm is over 3 feet long.
Mine's over 3 feet long too.
Right. So if you reach out to take it, we're already going to be further than 6 feet apart anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's problem number one. So she's smaller than him. The fact that they're like 6 feet apart, big deal. Her arms are probably shorter than 3 feet. So that's problem number one with that theory. Number two, she's no longer a Jedi. She no longer considers herself a Jedi. So she's not going to say, "May the Force be with you." She's just going to
I
say
can
something
see
that
that.
she can. She's just going to try to encourage him without using the techniques or the
courtesies
the
of Jedi.
sayings. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's problem number two. Problem number three, they were on a time shortage, so he had to rush out anyway. So I see a lot of problems with that. I'm sorry.
I would
Yeah.
argue a fourth problem,
Mm-hmm.
and that is she literally just ignited a weapon that has approximately a 3-foot reach on top of that arm length.
Yeah. I mean, it could be worse. At least it wasn't a negligent discharge.
Here's how long it looked like it would be. So,
Yeah.
add on
Yeah, that's true.
3 feet of her arm length. Yeah.
Yep. That's also true. I didn't even think about that, Nate.
I am going to play the opposite. Not because I want to, but I think it needs to be pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say you consider the Jedi, she's practically been with Anakin for a long time. They haven't seen each other in a long time. They're going to hug. They are going to hug. That's a given.
Not the case, because he tried to catch up. That he said he wanted to, he was gonna. The first time they met after season 5 was at the beginning. Was it at the beginning of this episode? Correct, or the halfway through? And she said, like, no, we'll have to catch up another time. So she's
Well,
still
didn't-
standoffish. So not the case.
When she was in charge of Anakin put her in charge of them fighter squadron. They got practically wiped out, and she came back and she was kind of sulking there. Anakin went up to her and hugged her.
Yeah, because it took that
And
long of
but hold, but listen,
exposure.
but here, but look, that wasn't a long distance of time.
Well, it was
There,
several
here,
days.
now you have a long distance of time. Even if you're not going to hug,
Mhm.
if Paul didn't see his brother, at least he's going to extend a handshake, an arm shake, or a partial hug.
Yeah.
Quote unquote, he
Real
always
quick, by
said
the way,
each
Ian,
other
check
speak of each
Facebook.
other as sisters and brothers. You know, and the other thing you said about she was not going to say the force be with you. If I remember correctly, in later episodes, not in the Clone Wars, but what we got in Rebels, she says it. And if
True,
I'm
but
correct, she says it again in the live action.
true. But I'm sure
So
that's they.
yeah, if I remember correctly, I know for a fact in Rebels she does say it, but in live action, I think she says it when what's his name, little Yoda, baby Yoda,
Yeah, Grogu.
Grogu.
goes onto the ship, and before she tells what's his name,
Din,
Mandalore, whatever his name is. I'm
Dingerin.
drawing a blank on him for some reason, but yeah, when they
Mando.
leave, so she does say it afterwards. You
Mm-hmm.
know, no, I don't think on one part. I don't think it's because of COVID, so to speak, like they're saying here. That I don't think, but I would say realistically, they're going to hug or give some type of acknowledgement or comfort of each other for seeing each other for such a long time. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I think she was still too standoffish for that. Like it took
A
Yeah,
little.
but her issue isn't Anakin. It never was Anakin. Her
r-
issue was
right,
the
the
Jedi.
Jedi in general. And
Yeah.
guess who else was there that made her
Obi-Wan.
feel a
One.
little bit uncomfortable? Exactly.
One.
Exactly. Who was on the council when the council expelled her from the order? So there's still some sort of, I mean, maybe not to Obi-Wan directly, but to maybe his
The
presence in general, because he was there and now he's there again, and he wouldn't let her, he wouldn't let Anakin go and help her.
Mhm.
So it's not like he's been the friendliest guy, in at least in this scenario, to her.
That is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. It's just an interesting thing to think about because I find it funny. They released the season 7 of Clone Wars like on a. It's been 2 years, right? Or like a year?
Yeah, they
Run.
released it in 20.
There's another thing
Yeah.
to point out since we're, I guess, a little touching about Ahsoka and Obi-Wan being, uh, adherent to the Jedi and the Jedi code.
Mm-hmm.
Obi-Wan wouldn't be too happy to see Anakin hand off two lightsabers to a non-Jedi.
Which is why Anakin waited
Yeah, I'm
until
just saying,
Obi-Wan left.
I wouldn't have flied, and even for Anakin to do that, to give her lightsabers, and on top of that, what we already know about the Jedi, he changed the color of them.
Yeah.
When you pick a color, when they are getting their crystals, they believed, according to the Clone Wars version of it, the crystal calls out to you. You don't pick any crystal when you're going in that cave. You don't pick any crystal. The crystal picks you and calls to you. So if
Mhm.
maybe she wanted a blue crystal, but the crystal that called out to her was green.
Yeah.
You
There's just
see?
another thing too I want to think about because the Ahsoka novel said something about this in particular event and said that her lightsabers were green. Now, of course, I think at this point the Ahsoka novel's been retconned so many times that we can question some level of canonicity to it, but
Mhm.
at the same time, it makes you think, just why?
You want a mind blower?
Hmm.
Here's a mind blower. Not both crystals in Ahsoka's lightsabers are green.
one's greenish
One was
yellow.
supposed to be yellow because Dave Filoni wanted to make one yellow, and
Yeah.
Lucas said no. So it kind of made the short blade one greenish yellow.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So
because I think it was something to do with like visual effects.
right.
With if it was yellow, then it would look weird.
But that's why if you ever see when you're watching the Clone Wars, if you ever go back and watch the older episodes with their blade, the green blades, the one blade has like a greenish yellowish to it. So
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this: if they had decided to do green with her outfit, I don't think it would have looked as good, based off of color alone. But I don't
Probably
know.
so.
Get rid
Yeah.
of that. Get rid of that.
well, I mean, it's all how you perceive because they change it so many times. What the color and what if you can switch colors. Don't forget when Anakin was on what was it, Geonosis, his lightsaber got broken. He was
Uh-huh.
handed a green lightsaber.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to Anakin's original green lightsaber?
We're gonna. That got destroyed by Count Dooku
Okay, I'll
in
give you
episode
that.
2.
Yeah,
I'll give you
that
that.
and it was a replacement lightsaber because where he had already broken one earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wondered, when a Jedi dies, do they just keep the old lightsabers sitting around as spares?
We
I
we
don't
do
know.
know that Obi-Wan kept Qui-Gon's lightsaber, at least in Legends.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyways, I don't know. I think that's really all I wanted to talk about when it comes to conspiracies. But I want to kind of share my overall thoughts on this arc and how it serves as an ending. Yeah, so yeah, in my opinion, that looks better with the blue than the green. Just with the outfit though. If she was
Yeah.
wearing her red outfit, then yeah, then she would need to have green.
I mean, blue and orange look better than green and orange. Just period.
I mean,
Also,
yeah,
hashtag ICC convention.
yeah. So, anyways, about this arc in general, what I really like about it is that it does make you feel like that this is like a big deal because the Siege of Mandalore was something that was already going to be planned, I think, when they were going to go with the original seventh season before Disney took it over.
Hmm.
And it's something that they outright confirmed happened in the Ahsoka novel again. But I don't know. I guess if there's one thing that it did well, let me find a picture of it. Because I found this picture like not long ago when we were talking about the Obi-Wan in the Mandalore arc.
Yeah.
I also let me see here. Oh yeah, here it is. So I'll share it real quick. It's almost like it's not one upping this picture, but you're still kind of getting this feeling of, oh, it's that bad. Oh wait, not that one. This one.
Yes.
Like it's a big deal, the Siege of Mandalore.
Hmm.
And so I also do like the voice acting that they have in the dialogue between Maul and Ahsoka, where Maul is talking exactly kind of like how Ponkrell said. I've seen the future, like the Republic and the Separatists are going to die out, and there's going to be a new world order rising, for lack of a better term. And so the only way that you're going to be able to get out of this is if you just join me, because think about it. You and I are not so different. And we were both abandoned by our masters.
Hmm.
where we would always love to say how Obi-Wan and Darth Maul are like the good rivals to each other, like the Flash and the Reverse Flash, and I'm totally for that, by the way. But truly Ahsoka and Maul are polar opposites because they underwent pretty similar situations where their masters did betray them, and they had to suffer for it. But of course, Ahsoka's the only one to really see the silver lining of it, you could say, and actually do something constructive for her and not just say, you know what, screw everybody and just start taking over.
That is true.
And then I also do like the emotion when it comes to Order 66. I mean, of course, now it's kind of become numb to us because we've seen it a lot with Obi-Wan Kenobi, Jedi Fallen Order. Just we've seen it a lot. And even though that we know exactly what's happening, it still makes us, feel sorry for what's going on, as well as kind of shift our mindset of what the clones are like, because for the longest time we've looked at the clones as like personalities and different people.
Hmm.
Now,
That
even
was
though
that was the whole thing of why Fives did what he did, because he didn't see the clones as disposable, whereas the Kaminoans were treating Tup as little more than a laboratory experiment.
exactly, and so one other thing I do want to make mention of is the scene between Rex and Ahsoka, where Rex is ever so fighting the Protocol 66, which it does make you think. Aside from plot driving aside, if you really think about it, it really does make you wonder how he was able to do that, because all other clones, and he's like any other clone, so why didn't he just snap like that?
I think it was his genuine love that he had as a sibling. I think it
Mhm.
was the love that he had for Ahsoka.
Yeah.
I think he had stronger willpower.
Uh-huh.
I mean, just because someone's been cloned, and we can't really say, but we have no real experience with it. But
Hmm.
originally in my day and age and time, when people thought about clone, it's a duplicate of you, but
Hmm.
it was identical thought up until the point of creation. But now
Yeah.
you get clones. Once a clone is created, it doesn't necessarily have anything besides look and
Hmm.
DNA. But other than that, it has not. None of them were Django in
Yeah.
personality or attitude. They
Yeah, I
all
think
were
that
unique. They all had
yeah.
a sense of, you know, I mean, they all look alike, but other than that, they all had an individuality, And
That
I
Who
mean,
was
was
opening the shaken up soda?
that was me. I didn't know it was shaken up,
oh,
Okay,
but
buddy,
fair enough.
could have been worse. All right, so let's fast forward to the ending. So we see Ahsoka leave her lightsabers behind, and I just love that the last, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes of it was just like total silence.
Hmm.
And then we actually go to a time jump where Vader actually now revisits supposedly Ahsoka's death site. And I gotta say, this is probably the best that Vader's looked in animation.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's
Far
gotta be the
better than
best.
that. Far better than that Ralph McQuarrie influenced design that he looked like in Rebels.
I mean, that one wasn't bad, but it just wasn't as good.
No.
But now, here's the question I want to ask everyone before I move on to Transformers for the last, I don't know, couple minutes.
Hmm.
So I asked this last stream about Clone Wars Season 6. Now that we have a real ending to the Clone Wars, like the Clone Wars is gone. like the Clone Wars is over. We see Vader pick up Ahsoka's lightsaber. Like all of it's over. How does this ending compare to the one that we got in season 6? Like, if you had to, who compared the two?
I honestly don't know what to think as far as that goes. I like the ending that we got, but as far as what was a better ending for the show, season 6 versus season 7, I'm honestly undecided right now.
Yeah. I
Remind
don't know.
me
What is.
again. Excuse me. Remind me again how season 6 ended.
So
It ended with.
basically,
Oh, go ahead.
Yoda goes back from Morband, or Korban rather,
Uh huh.
and passes all of his tests, and basically goes back to the Jedi Temple saying, I have a feeling that the Clone Wars is soon ending. And then everything ends with he and a few other Jedi walking out, which I do like the dialogue that was shared, but that's really the best way I can sum it up without going too
Okay. Yeah.
much into detail.
Yeah, because he starts his training as far as like life after death through the Force with
Uh-huh.
Qui-Gon, I think, right? Wasn't that series of episodes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. So, my personal opinion, season seven's far better.
Okay.
And it's because it has my favorite Star Wars character. It's
Yes.
got Anakin in the ending, or at
Mhm.
least in the first like half of the season.
Mhm.
Um, and then it's got Ahsoka, my second favorite Star Wars character. So it's like
Mhm.
the two best, and those 4 episodes, those last 4 episodes, to me are the best Star Wars cinema I think in existence,
Yeah.
because
See
you
that.
have you have Anakin in his prime, and you have Ahsoka in her prime,
Mhm.
and this is where this is also where I think they both look the best in animation. I think this iteration of Anakin looks the best out of any of the Clone Wars stuff that has happened in previous seasons.
Yeah.
And I think this iteration of Ahsoka looks better than any of the others that we've seen of her in the previous Clone Wars seasons, and leagues also better than uh, the Ahsoka we get in Rebels. I don't know who designed the Ahsoka in Rebels, but to me, she
Yeah.
just does not look like an Ahsoka.
Yeah. Like,
No, she does not.
yeah, I mean, how I felt about Ahsoka and Rebels, we can talk about another time, but
Right, but she just looks wrong. Like the eyes, she almost looks Asian or something. You know
mm,
what I mean?
yeah, I kind of see what
Yeah.
you mean.
Like the eyes are
Yeah.
way too small, and there's not enough. I don't
Yeah.
know. The whole facial construction is wrong.
Yeah. So I guess the last point I want to make is that I'm kind of like you, PJ. I'm undecided on how those endings sort of fit, so far as which one is better, which one's worse,
Mhm.
because they both do the same thing just in different ways, where it really does make you feel sad because that's the only way that the Clone Wars really can't end, because you said it before,
Exactly.
it's a tragedy.
Well,
And
can I ask you, did you ever see the Clone Wars 2D movies?
I did.
Okay. I'm going to throw this out there. The whole purpose of the Clone Wars, especially the 2D and even the 3D, is to fill in the gap and get us into Revenge of the Sith, the movie.
Yeah.
And out of all of them that completes that task, to this day, the 2D movie does that the best.
Yeah.
The one with
Even
Yoda
though
at the end of season 6, I thought was a good way to end it. Unfortunately, uh, I guess that was a rush job. I could have seen that being the actual ending if they had the time and had completed it the right way for season 7.
mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And real quick,
I do like the last episode of season 7, but neither one of them tie in to Revenge of the Sith the way that ending on the 2D Clone War movie tied
Yeah.
it in
Right.
right
But
into things.
But the thing is, and to rebuttal that real quick, Green Lantern says, "Am I the only one that thought the Marquez sisters weren't too bad?" No, you're not. I agree with you. But my rebuttal to you, Phil, is I don't think they intended to do that from the beginning. I think they wanted it so that the final arc of the Clone Wars happened during Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah,
Basically,
where they wanted
while
the war
Revenge
to
of the Sith
over.
is happening, this is what's going on over here.
Well, that might have been for the season at 7 ending. That definitely wasn't for the season 6. If it would have
Right.
remained the final season,
Right. And I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But they did that. That's the way that they chose to do season 7, and I don't think it's fair to cast that as a bad thing.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's a bad thing. I was just saying that out of all the intentions of all the Clone Wars, regardless of which, the 2D movies, the season 6 ending, or the season 7 ending, you're
Yeah.
still trying to tie in to the Revenge of the Sith, and out of all of them, it's still the 2D. It goes straight. It blows. You can watch that, and you're right into Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
This you got. I love the Siege of Mandalore, but you have to remember, in the grand scheme of things, do we really need to have the Siege of Mandalore? No, that was included because that was part of the Clone Wars arc with the series. That
Yeah.
wasn't part of that arc, and I like it. I enjoyed it, but it's, to me, like I said, the Clone Wars and the Revenge of the Sith movie should have had it flown in just like they did in this 2D movie. They should. Like I said, it blows.
Hmm.
Well, see, I could see that opinion, but I do not like the Revenge of the Sith movie at all. So I know, whatever.
This is sacrilege.
So coming from
I have to play some form of clip for that. I can't let you just get away with that.
You sealed
Yeah.
your fate.
you knew
okay,
that.
here.
DJ.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Hmm.
Actually, no, I didn't know that. You and I never had
Dude,
that conversation.
I thought we did. Well, anyway, so
No.
my point is I like Clone Wars better than Revenge of the Sith, so I would rather watch that chain of events through the eyes of Clone Wars, which is why I like, once again, why I like the ending of season 7. So yeah, come fight me, Cobra. I dare you. I have guns surrounding my room right here. I dare you.
No.
Spoken like a Virginian.
Bad.
no! Oh no!
That is
Spoken like a
not
Virginian.
okay.
Bad.
Oh lordy.
Well, I'll let it slide because let's just say I have instruments.
Yes, that makes 2 of us.
I
Okay,
think that makes 3 of us.
okay, so that's my overall thoughts on Clone Wars. So I've only got like maybe a couple minutes left, but I would like to go ahead and take some time to talk about Transformers just a little bit. So with these 5 episodes, I really liked how, even though it still makes a time jump from the 3-episode arc More Than Meets the Eye, it's still telling something of a one cohesive story. Even though that in some ways it's kind of like Star Trek, where sometimes it wants to tell its own stories that are somewhat self-contained, that don't really mean anything canonically. But I do like that in a lot of ways, especially with the Dinobots. We get to see the Autobots learn more about Earth. And then... oh no. Alright,
And
yeah.
you have opened a can of worms on that one.
Well, so real quick, my personal opinion, the best Star Wars movie is The Empire Strikes Back.
I have to
Okay.
agree.
Fair enough.
Okay.
That
fair
is-
enough. Yeah.
That is my favorite Star Wars movie. And it's just, I don't know. I think it is the best Star Wars movie ever.
Yeah.
Over Revenge of the Sith. Over number 2, I think, is Attack of the Clones, right? That's just my favorite.
I gotta disagree
I,
with you on that one.
I know.
Okay. I can see, and I know why, and I'm gonna say this: the Clone Wars, the movie, the actual movie, Episode 2. I think
Mhm.
of it like I see A New Hope. It's you can cut everything out, but it has the best battle scenes of
It
all
does.
Star Wars.
Yes,
Battle of
it
Geonosis rocks.
and it has Count Dooku in his prime, which is pretty cool. For like almost the whole movie, I still don't care about any of
I think
that.
Episode 2 does not get enough love and respect
No,
as it
I don't.
should.
I don't think it does. But anyway,
Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back, the goat of all Star Wars movies.
Of
But here's
course,
the
yes.
thing, because you said what you said about Return of the Revenge of the Sith, I'm about to expose you, Ian, because brace yourself for this, everyone. The headless guitarist actually has a head.
Dumb.
Yeah, right here. You see, seven tuning keys. It's beautiful Ibanez
Which is
logo
one
right
too
here.
many.
It's perfect. Shh, 7 is the number of perfection, dude.
Mhm.
It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
brown
Either
and
6 or
brown and
12.
gold, and
Either 6 or
Yeah.
look at
12.
that.
All
Look
I'm
at
gonna say is the best heads are made of Kevlar. That's coming from a drummer.
that. Is also worth pointing out.
hmm Yeah. So, anyways, what I was saying earlier was that even though that Starscream is also clearly, if anything, just a whiny little manipulator, he's not dumb. In fact, he actually does play Skyfire like a fiddle, which, fun fact, by the way, I think the reason why there's actually a reason why he's not known as Jetfire in this version of Transformers. And I think it actually had to do with like copyrights where Jetfire was already being used by another toy company and Hasbro at the time had to go ahead and just change it to, fit copyright laws, but we all knew that it was really Jetfire just because of the toy design of it.
There was a similar situation with Shockwave, but the real reason why you don't see in the beginning any uh, jet Autobots because it was never intended to be any jet Autobots. Autobots were supposed to be like
Cars.
cars and trucks, and the Decepticons were originally supposed to be jets
Space.
and
Yeah.
vehicles of war because they were originally on Cybertron, the military.
To make war, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Which
but
makes
later on,
sense.
you see both sides. You'll see in G1 season 1, you'll see they'll start making construction vehicles, especially with the one merges the
Devastator.
5 Devastator. You'll see Decepticon cars, and then you'll start seeing
Pretty
the
much
Autobots
everything
have,
under the sun.
yeah.
To
So they
even
both sides start developing it, but
to even a full-on planet, which I honestly can't wait to get into.
But just remember this: when you're watching season 1 and before the movie, and even towards the end of season 1, what you have to if when you watch the beginning, the Autobots are driven off Cybertron.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but towards the end of season 1, you come to find out, wait, they technically are still Autobots, still on Cybertron, which don't make sense because Optimus Prime ordered all of them off.
Yeah.
So there's a little conflict there that goes on. Where's these Autobots and why didn't they leave when Optimus Prime told them to leave at the end of episode 1?
Yeah.
And you have to remember, Cybertron when they left was devoid of pretty much most of its energy.
Mhm.
The reason both of them were
Mhm.
going to Earth because it was known to be had resources,
Mm-hmm.
and both sides need the resources. But that storyline kind of gets changed towards the end of season 1. Just watch
Okay.
out for it when you're
Yeah.
watching.
All right. Well, I guess with that being said,
Oh, by the way, Phil, this one's for you. Hashtag justice for Picard, who is right here.
Nobody's worried about Snoke.
all right.
Is,
Well,
is he still alive?
Yes, he
I don't
is.
even know. But at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and head out. I've got places to be.
Later, Michael.
All right. Well,
Have a
thank
good
you
night.
for hopping on here, Michael. All right, so now that Michael has had his chance to speak, Pacific will be joining us here in a little bit. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and actually go through scene by scene what happens in in these final 4 episodes of the Clone Wars. So it starts with this one battle on, I forget the planet is, but they're fighting on this big bridge. And the Republic forces, the 212th and Obi-Wan, are getting their butts absolutely whipped. Anakin shows up all nonchalant. He even just randomly dodges a missile blast and commits a war crime, and they win the battle. And all of a sudden, they're called back to their ship, where they have a message sent to them from Mandalore, and it's Ahsoka and Bo-Katan reaching out to them. And of course, Anakin's elated to see Ahsoka, but Ahsoka, as you already said, Phil, is kind of standoffish and being, we'll catch up another time, Anakin. Right now, I need your help. And so Anakin and Obi-Wan take the ship there, and basically they say, we have the opportunity to capture Maul and retake Mandalore from him, but we need the Republic's help. And so after some discussion, it looks like they're going to help them, but suddenly they get an urgent message that General Grievous has attacked Coruscant and kidnapped the Chancellor. So Anakin and Obi-Wan obviously rush off to rescue the Chancellor because it's time for episode 3 to start happening. And Ahsoka is left with a portion of the 501st, now renamed the 332nd, and Captain Rex is promoted to commander to lead this, since she's not a Jedi. Anakin, of course, gives Ahsoka her lightsabers back. They're blue now. And yeah, the battle on Mandalore begins, and it is probably the biggest land battle that we have ever seen in the Clone Wars show. Wouldn't you guys say?
Yeah, off of, excuse me, go on just off of my memory, I would agree.
Yeah. So eventually they track down where Maul is, and come to find out, real quick, we got another guest popping in here. Say hello to Ghost Rider. What's up, man?
Greetings, mortals.
How you doing?
I can't complain. Can't turn down talking about Star Wars when I'm not working. So hey, why not?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, Cobra.
Because I know Phil is going to say something.
Didn't I say
about
that
it.
ain't up to military standards? You were trained and taught how to fix pillows and make your bed.
You ought to see my bed. Actually, no, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'd be scared to
seen
see
it.
mine.
You know, if your master sergeant was there, he would flip a quarter. If it doesn't bounce, you're in trouble.
Hold on. Time out, Phil. The Navy does not have master
Oh,
sergeants.
excuse me.
That's this guy's branch right here.
What is it? What do they call them again in the Navy?
Chief. They call him Chief, Master Chief.
Master Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, means Master Chief. Spartan 117 is a member of the Navy, not the Corps. Just saying.
Right.
Neither here nor there, but
they eventually track down Maul, and come to find out Maul wanted the Jedi to come here, but specifically he wanted Kenobi. He even says it in the infamous line, "I was hoping for Kenobi. Why are you here?" And so they chase down Maul after a brief skirmish with him and his Mandalorians, led by Gar Saxon, by the way. And eventually they find Maul, who had captured Jesse. They find him in the throne room. And Ahsoka and Maul are left alone in there after Jesse is rescued. And Maul and Ahsoka talk about how pretty much they're pretty much coming to the end of not just the Clone Wars, but the Jedi and the Republic as Ahsoka knows it. How Maul pretty much says that this whole thing has been orchestrated by Darth Maul's master, Darth Sidious, to wipe the slate clean and remove the Jedi as a power player in the galaxy. And that, as Michael already said, Darth Maul acknowledges that both of them were cast aside by their master after they fulfilled their specific role. And Darth Maul offers Ahsoka the chance to help him take down Darth Sidious. And at first it looks like Ahsoka is willing to help, but first she asks a question of, why did you mention that you needed Anakin Skywalker? And that's when Darth Maul says, because he's the key to all of this. Because he has been groomed for his role as the next apprentice to Darth Sidious and the destroyer of the Jedi. And of course, Ahsoka doesn't believe him. So because of this, the two engage in, I think what we can all agree is the best lightsaber fight in the entire show. Wouldn't you guys say?
In the entire show,
Top
The-
three.
I'd say it's up there. I wouldn't say it's the best.
I would say it's probably Ahsoka's best duel that
I can
she's
do
good
that.
at.
I can definitely get behind that. Ahsoka's best.
But as
Yeah.
far as being, I don't know. I really like Anakin and Count Dooku in the banquet hall. I thought that was pretty good. But
It was. I think we can.
What
I think
about-
we can agree it's at least top 3, right?
yeah,
Or
probably.
what about Maul and Savage versus Sidious?
That was good too.
Yeah, that was good.
But here's the thing. One thing to note with this particular duel is that they animate it in a much different way than they had animated other lightsaber duels, where with this one, there was actual motion capture involved with Ray Park reprising his role in the motion capture suit as Darth Maul. Because you notice, not that it's a bad thing, but you notice how the movements of the Jedi in this show, anytime they were swinging around a lightsaber, looked kind of exaggerated, we'll say. Likely because they weren't using motion capture and were pretty much animating it from scratch. You can especially tell this in the early, like, seasons 1 through 3 type duels. You guys get what I'm talking about?
Hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Whereas now it feels more grounded and more realistic, and I definitely enjoy the fight for that. But at the end of it, Maul ends up getting captured, and that leads into one of the most uncomfortable, by design, one of the most uncomfortable sequences in all of this show, where it's specifically in the episode Shattered, which is the second to last episode. And the whole first half of that is pretty much the immediate aftermath of the Battle of Mandalore. And the whole atmosphere compared to everything that had come before it and everything that's about to happen, is quiet, like eerily quiet. Like to borrow a line from Lord of the Rings, it's the deep breath before the plunge, where the soldiers are getting out of there, Darth Maul's been arrested, and Ahsoka and Rex, while they're on board the cruiser, have a nice touching moment. And then it's ruined by Sidious contacting Rex and saying execute Order 66. But here's the thing also with that. Just before this, Ahsoka feels through the Force everything that Anakin was going through at that moment, involving seeing Palpatine and Mace Windu going at it, and Anakin intervening on behalf of Palpatine. And they used actual lines from Revenge of the Sith. So what did you guys think when you saw that?
Yeah, I mean, this is Order 66 from Ahsoka's point of view, and I mean, it's kind of cool in Tales whenever we see Anakin using the clones to train Ahsoka, which does kind of add to this about with when all this stuff goes down as to how she survives, even after George said that she was dead, you know.
Yeah,
But that's just my take.
understandable.
There,
Anyone else?
there's contradictions even when you're watching and you're seeing these episodes leading into everything. I mean, look at it this way: when you get the Darth Maul versus Ahsoka, and he reveals to her everything, his plan was to bring who to Mandalore? Was to bring
Maul.
not Obi-Wan, was to
Anakin.
bring Anakin. That was his plan. That was the
Mhm.
thing. He wanted to kill Anakin. So why did he say in the beginning when he's talking to her he was expecting Obi-Wan?
Probably because he was hiding some of his. Basically, he was playing his cards closer to his chest. It was well
I can
known
see
that
that.
Obi-Wan and Maul had, their ongoing rivalry, and I think, we just lost Ghost Rider, but I think Maul was just kind of playing into that, hiding his true intentions.
I
Did internet crash Ghost Rider?
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's all right. What are you saying,
I
Nate?
I could actually see where I get what you're coming at. The Maul's playing it off like that, but in all honesty, I could actually see Maul also being entirely honest as well, that he was expecting Obi-Wan. Because if you think about it, out of all the Jedi currently that we know of in the Order, who has the strongest ties to Mandalore? And on top of it, who has the strongest ties to Maul? Who would
Obi-Wan.
have the reason for a personal reason to go?
Mm-hmm. Obi-Wan.
Kenobi. Yes.
Yes. So, like we said, Order 66 happens. And the moment that he gets the order, Rex tries his absolute best to resist it. Like he's standing there pointing his guns at Ahsoka, and you can tell he's trying so hard to restrain himself. You can see it on his face, and he's like, "Fine fives, fine fives." But soon he gives in, and everyone starts opening fire, and Ahsoka just barely escapes. And so
Can
the
I
search begins. Yeah.
can I point out something here real quick?
Mm-hmm.
I have a theory about this scene here, and my theory is that Rex was not the only one resisting the order. Because if you look at I mean it's live action, but if you look at Revenge of the Sith, when all the clones turned on the Jedi, it was pretty much immediate, right? Well, in this case, um, my theory is because they were all part of the 501st, they all just stood there and pointed for a little bit. None of them pulled the trigger instantly. So Rex may have been resisting audibly, obviously he was, but I think everybody else was also like not ready to pull the trigger
I
because they
could
were part of the
maybe see that.
501st.
I could maybe see that, but I'm not 100% sure. So continuing on, the first thing that Ahsoka decides to do is go to Maul because she thinks this is his doing. So she releases Maul from his prison after seeing that the clones were trying to execute him also, which let's talk about that. What did they gain from executing Maul? Why was that part of it?
One less magic space magic lightsaber wielding nut job to have to take care of.
Okay, fair enough, I
I
guess.
think Order 66, they give it to us limited, saying it's Jedi. I think Order 66 entails any Force user because Ahsoka wasn't a Jedi, and yet they were ready to blast her as quick as they blast anybody else that was quote unquote Jedi. So I think 66 had a broader scope than they tell us between the Emperor and the Geonosians. I think it was put in place there probably anybody when that order is giving anybody that was a force user, that's it. Now, how
Well,
did that prevent them from shooting Anakin, even if he turned to the dark side, and the Emperor himself? I don't know.
because
But
they're still ordered to still be loyal to the Emperor, and if the Emperor says that Darth Vader is his man, then they're not going to kill him.
yeah, but if it's the orders written to kill, but technically it was to kill any renegade Jedi. That was the
No,
prime. Yes, it is. That was put in there when you see the episode with not Admiral Trench. What was that Jedi that went against the clones and then they eventually had to take him down? The one that looked like a I can't think of his name. Looked like
the
a
one with
lizard.
4 arms uses two staffs.
No,
Corral.
the one where he was going against every
It was
clone.
Ponkrell.
Yeah,
It was okay. Then that's who it
Yes.
was. He when that order is in place, that's where that Order 66, according to the TV show, that's where that order was put in place. Any renegade Jedi, that's Order 66.
Mhm.
See, this is why I dislike episode 3 of the prequel trilogy. There's a lot of plot holes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
Oh.
66 is so up there.
well,
You know,
the thing about the term Jedi in Star Wars is it encompasses it's a wide brush. All right, so Jedi in Star Wars in universe, people use the term Jedi for any Force user, like you were kind of saying, Phil. The only discrepancy I have with your theory is the fact that Order 66 did not encompass Sidious or anybody on Sidious's side. If Sidious says this guy, because basically it's okay, all y'all are loyal to me now, not the Jedi, and the Jedi are bad guys. So if Sidious says this guy is okay, then they're not going to shoot him.
I would also like to kind of throw a wrench into the mix, and that makes it a little bit easier to understand would be the inhibitor chips, as they were hard programmed to immediately exclude anyone matching the Emperor, Sidious, Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, and Anakin from the beginning. Potentially Dooku, but I doubt it.
Maybe.
it's
So
because even when you think about Anakin turning, there's a moment in time when he's still at the Jedi Temple. He
that
might
is
not
true.
have went there. He might have just stayed put. And if he, let's just hypothetically, if he stayed put, what happens then? And let's say the Emperor wipes out Mace Windu, everything goes down the same way. Does he? How do you tell a chip to change all of a sudden? Okay, now you can kill Anakin Skywalker. You know he's not on the Emperor's side. Kill him.
You're going to see a little bit of that when I get my rewrites done, because that's more along the storyline I'm going to follow.
Well, I would love to see that. I would love to see that. But yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to draw off subject, but I don't. I say 76 is broader than what we think, and the reason, like I say, it's because you put Maul in the mix. He's not a Jedi, and technically, Ahsoka's not a Jedi. I think it's
True.
any Force user, and that's it. That's just my opinion.
So, getting back on topic, continuing with the story, Ahsoka again she rescues Darth Maul and says, "Listen, I need a diversion, and you're my diversion. Go cause as much chaos as possible." And so Darth Maul begrudgingly does so, notably without any sort of weapon. And we see some of that carnage that he causes, where he is able to face down clone after clone after clone with nothing but his bare hands and the Force. He's ripping panels from walls, using them as shields, and then throwing them down the hallway, decapitating clones and or pinning them to the wall. And Cobra Disney Jedi says, some say that Maul's fight against the 501st without a saber was better than the hallway scenes of Vader and Luke, and I can see why. I can see why too, but I still think that Vader's hallway scene was the best one. But anyways, Ahsoka finds herself in sort of a droid storage closet where her old friend R7 is. And she gets into a computer on the ship and looks up what Rex was talking about regarding fives, and actually finds an old recording left by Captain Rex basically saying, I think that these inhibitor chips in us were put there for some greater purpose that we don't know about yet. So from there, Ahsoka sets out trying to find Captain Rex, which she does, and manages with the help of the droids to get him knocked out, and they take him to the med bay and gets the inhibitor chip removed. And once they do, he returns to normal. Thus begins the final episode, where now Rex and Ahsoka have to find their way off the ship with every single clone now gunning for both of them. And eventually they figure out that the only way off is through the main hangar on a shuttle, because Maul by now has completely destroyed the hyperdrive regulators in the ship. And so now the ship is breaking apart, and it's caught in the gravitational field of a moon. So eventually it comes down to a big standoff between Ahsoka and Rex and the rest of the 501st, now led by Jesse. And Rex tries to reason with them that Ahsoka technically doesn't apply to Order 66 because she's not a Jedi. And for a moment, that causes Jesse to lower his weapons, but it doesn't work. They open fire, and what follows from here can only be described as well, let me get the sound effect ready. What happens next can only be described as a cluster. At least to quote
Wow.
my cousin. You were there for that, Nate.
You've been victimized by the back tube, and now it has flowed over.
Hey, at least I said and not. So eventually, Maul makes it to the shuttle that Ahsoka and Rex were trying to go for, and basically gets out of there without them, leaving Ahsoka and Rex to just barely, with the ship starting to break apart in orbit, They make it to a Y-wing and they manage to escape. The entire Star Destroyer crashes into the moon, killing everyone aboard. And for the next several hours, Ahsoka and Rex dig graves for everyone and place their helmets on a stick as a memorial to them. And then we get a time jump. We don't know quite yet how many years into the future, but Vader is now on this planet and it's snowing with his stormtroopers. And he looks down and sees Ahsoka's lightsaber that she dropped on the ground. He looks at it for a while, turns it on, and I believe he takes it with him.
Yes, he does. He takes it back with him.
Yes.
He takes it with him, all the while saying nothing. And I like that one shot that you see of Vader as he's looking up, and you can see through his red lenses in his mask. You can see through to Anakin's eyes.
You mean the blue eyes?
Yes.
Really? I didn't notice you could see through it. I'll have to rewatch that.
Let me see if I can pull it up.
I've never noticed that before. That's cool.
Let me see if I can pull it up. Give me a sec.
I'm not sure if it was Dave Filoni or who that mentioned it, but I think the reason being is almost similar to, I hate to bring it up, but the Obi-Wan series when Obi-Wan breaks his mask and he's talking to him, you see blue for moments and then it goes to red. So it's like at moments you're seeing Anakin come through. And
Yes.
supposedly at that moment when he picks up that lightsaber of Ahsoka and he looks up and sees the little bird, her little bird thing, at that moment, maybe for an instant, Anakin came through.
Mhm.
So
Yes. So that is how not just this arc, but the Clone Wars as a whole ends. And before we discuss our final thoughts, I have a quick video clip that I want to play that sort of capsulates the whole show. So have a look at this.
Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. Evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction. In the fields of bodies burning, as the war machine keeps turning. Death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed mind. Oh, Lord, yeah. Oh, Lord, yeah. Oh, Lord.
Now, Phil, would you do the honors and explain the history and meaning behind the song War Pigs that was being played in the background of that?
sure. As a lot of people might not know, this is early 70s. You're still got the peace movement, anti-war sentiment, and even though Black Sabbath at this time is starting to become dark, this is their anti-war. You want to call it anti-Vietnam War? This was their theme. This was their thing. And when you listen to it and it tells you generals gather in dark masses, well, that's true. Everything they say in
It's
the song, if you, regardless of what age or time, when you have a war or conflict, that song rings true. It
yes.
and another thing, when you listen to the song, it tells you as a if you listen to the lyrics and different parts of it, you'll hear like generals gather in dark masses like witches at black masses. Okay, what's that tell you? Uh, you're not necessarily is your country going to tell you every single reason why you're going to war. So there are like black masses. What's a black mass? Well, it's something secret, something that they don't share with you.
Hmm.
So it kind of that song has always opened people's eyes when it comes to war. You know, so one of the few Ozzy Sabbath songs that I like, though I think Theo
Yes.
sings it better.
Cobra puts it the best. It's a Vietnam protest song. It
Yeah,
is.
pretty
And
much.
I've used this song to make comparisons on this channel before. For those that remember a couple revisited streams ago, we were talking about the Star Trek the Original Series episode Taste of Armageddon, which that song also applies to because that's the one that shows the Enterprise visiting Iminiar 7 where it and its neighboring planet now fight their wars entirely by computer, but with but people still really die, and Kirk has to put a stop to that. Basically, war. I don't know. There, I'm trying to find the right words to say here. Basically, there is no winners or losers when it comes to war. In some way, everyone loses. And I believe Nate, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the Clone Wars being a tragedy. And Nate, you and I have had countless conversations about this, both fictional and real, at work, haven't we?
Yes. And also plenty of conversations of really the kind of ugly sides of war as well.
Excuse me.
And truthfully, and I know I don't think we've ever directly mentioned it in any of our conversations, but really all wars are truly a loss. It's a loss of innocence, and in many ways, that is the greatest loss that anyone can have. As you think about it, we sit there and won the Second World War, but in a way, we also sit there and lost our ability to be an isolationist nation and to be at peace with ourselves to now we are where we sit today on the world stage. And you get the war on terror. That changed the way we perceive a lot of things in today's culture.
I will tell you this. I mean, if you take this age and time when the song War Pigs came out, Beatles were really anti-war. Even though John Lennon, he was anti-war, he did uh, donate and help give money out to the veterans returning. But notice a difference in 1982 when Britain goes to war with Argentina over the Falklands. Three Beatles were still alive. There was not a single protest against the Falkland War. It's easy for somebody from another country to tell you, don't go to war, don't do this. Yet, years later, they do the same thing. Yet, not I want you to go on YouTube and show me any of the surviving Beatles protest, say anything against the Falkland Island War. Not a single one.
Yes, and to kind of go with that, you could also really look at World War One and World War Two with America gets involved.
I mean, look, that's something to remember. Even to this day, the main reason we want two reasons we went to World War One. One, because the Germans sunk the Lusitania, even though they warned everybody. This is a ship going into a war zone, and we are sinking and blockading Britain. We did the same thing to the South during the Civil War. You could
Yes.
not cross that blockade, and if any ship tried to cross the blockade, the U.S. Navy would sink them, period, regardless if there were civilians on there or not. So America wasn't too happy that they sunk the Lusitania. And years later, you find out, even though they still try to deny it, they find hundreds and thousands of 301 cartridges for ammunition on the Lusitania. And remember, that is a passenger ship.
Yep.
Real quick, I want to break in and say this. I just got a DM on Instagram from Pacific. He says he's not going to be able to make it. So pretty much once we're done with
We're done.
talking the Clone Wars, that's going to be it for this stream. I want Pacific to be here when we talk when we talk Transformers. So we'll save the Transformers stuff for another time. Once we're done talking about the Clone Wars, we'll cut the stream there.
Alrighty.
So, Old Man says something really nice about this base. Basically, he's saying, if you're alive at the end, you won. And that's probably the best way to break it down to its most basic truth. Now, back to the song War Pigs. Let's look at that through the lens of Clone Wars and kind of interpret what it was that we saw here. You have Palpatine, Darth Sidious, whose ultimate goal is to take over the galaxy for the Sith. How's he going to do that? Is he going to just storm the gates and lead a frontal assault on his own? No. He's going to do something far more deceitful. He's going to destroy the Republic from the inside out. How does he do that? He starts out, at least as far as the movies are concerned, as just a lowly Republic senator. But he has certain helpers, we'll say, positioned in key places in the government to make himself look stronger and make the other Chancellor Valorum, look bad. Thus, of course, manipulating Padme into asking for that vote of no confidence.
Yes,
Which
his political kung fu is strong.
It is very strong. He takes advantage of that vote of no confidence, and he gets himself elected as Chancellor. Meanwhile, he through his other channels is starting to sow malcontent with certain systems to the point that they want to break away from the Republic. And these systems turn to people like Dooku, an ex-Jedi who is Darth Sidious's apprentice, to become basically their front man for their new separatist movements. And all talks of peace are rendered meaningless. So what happens? Oh, look, here's this one world called Camino that by some sheer luck of the universe, some Jedi we've never heard of just created for us a clone army. Now we can go and fight that war. And now he's going to manipulate Jar Jar Binks into giving him emergency powers to allow him to sanction the army, and thus the war begins. And once he gets his emergency powers, he doesn't want to give it up. He continues to gain more and more power. He eventually takes over the entire banking system of the Republic, which, Nate, you've made that point multiple times, that pretty much when that happened is when the Republic became the Empire, just not in name, right?
Yes. At least that was one of the big major steps, of course, when kind of the Jedi are shoved out of the way for Ahsoka's trial. That is also another big moment, well, at least that we see as a moment.
Mm-hmm. Until finally, it comes down to, it's finally time to bring all of this together. So we see in episode 3, he allows himself to get captured by Grievous and Dooku to lure Anakin and Obi-Wan there. He gets Dooku out of the way, sends all of the Separatists with Grievous for Obi-Wan to chase down, to allow him to start to groom Anakin for his new role as Vader. Meanwhile, he's installed a program in these supposedly loyal soldiers of the Republic that have been fighting alongside the Jedi for 3 years and some change now. And he's basically programmed them without them knowing to flip on the Jedi and kill them like that, just at a command. And then, at the right possible moment, all of the pieces fall to place. Order 66 comes about, and who comes out looking like the good guy at the end?
Palpatine.
Mm-hmm. And
There-
real quick,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nate, I saw what you sent me. Is this something?
That's something that if any of y'all want to watch later, feel free. But it just reminded me, based upon the tangent that me and Phil got on, about kind of why we got into certain wars.
Right.
There's things that they never touched on that I wished in the movies, in the TV shows, we would have got. They never explain to people why, when they say the Jedi and the Republic for 1,000 years kept peace, they don't tell you why they disband the Republic military at the start of them 1,000 years. Then, lo and behold, when there's a war, they get handed an army and they call it the Republic Army, but really didn't know where it come from, who put it in place, but they accepted it. So
Yeah.
the Jedi kind of put themselves in that predicament by asking the Senate 1,000 years ago to disband their military. You know, think of it this way: small countries, Monaco, they have, you might not call them a military, but they have a military force technically named. Even the Pope has his Swiss Guard. You got to have some force to keep order. You know, leaving it to the Jedi was a mistake, and putting them in charge of the military. I never, even from the start, that idea was a bad idea. You know, it took them from peacekeepers to military, which supposedly was the reason 1,000 years ago they didn't want that. So another thing is, you brought up Palpatine wanted control for the Sith. That's not necessarily true. He wanted control for himself. You know,
But as a representative of the
no,
Sith.
because here's the
He
thing
even
that
said
they
it.
leave hanging up in the
He
air.
said it himself in episode 3. Once more, the Sith will rule the galaxy.
But here's the thing: that's him and Maul. That doesn't mean they're the only two Sith in the
No, that was
entire
in
galaxy.
Revenge of the Sith.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, they are not. Even when you see, this is what I hate, because they changed everything when they ditched the EU.
Originally, it was because Palpatine foresaw the
Mhm.
coming of something from beyond the edge of the galaxy.
A new Sith Emperor, a new or Sith. Let's not call them an academy. but-
Sithari.
Yeah. So, but to me, you know, like I said, there's a lot of loose ends they could have touched on, cleared up. Like I said, the only way you know some of this is either you play games, which they mention it, you read the books, you read the comics. But then again, like you've seen through Clone Wars, even this whole season, they kind of change things as they go. You know, they
Right.
change as they go.
The problem with the Jedi being military leaders and that screwing them up, taking them away from being peacekeepers, is in the real world. I say real world because there's evil in the real world and there's evil in their world too. If you're gonna keep the peace, you have to fight. That's just the way it is. And if that fight, it's if you're going to do it through the military, if you're going to do it through, militia or whatever, eventually, at some point, you are going to have to take military action to keep the peace. That's just the way it is. So I don't see this whole thing, especially it was in the Clone Wars too. Who was it? The Martez sisters, I think, were complaining about the Jedi
Yes.
being military leaders instead of peacekeepers, and the whole time I'm thinking that argument does not stand. Excuse me, because at some point you have to have military action, especially in this case. I mean, what are they supposed to do? Sit there and let the Separatists take over the galaxy? So you have to take. My point is, you have to take military action to keep the peace on the occasion. There is just no other way to do it.
I
So
agree, but I just didn't agree that the Jedi themselves should have been leading the charge.
Yeah,
I think
personally,
it contradicts what the Jedi stand for.
So basically, it would be as if, say, if we dismantled our military and then we had the cops become the military.
no,
Because cops are
no,
supposed to
no. What I'm saying is the whole thing of what it turned the Jedi into, not what it turned the military into, but what it turned the Jedi into.
They basically
That's my problem with it.
they 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 forsook their ideals basically that they
Oh, yeah.
started.
Well, another thing is, and this is where it swing. You really have a hard time deciding when they come up with the plan, the Jedi, that they need to take control of the government, and even Yoda says this is a dark path. At that point, taking over the government, even though okay, Palpatine's been there too long, but he did it sneakily, underhandedly, but he did it legally. He didn't do.
Exactly.
They gave him
Just
the power. It wasn't like he forced them to give him the power.
Well, they gave him the power because they were under his influence.
Right.
To be
And
But
fair,
here,
it's funny you say that, Phil, because
Right.
that is a great example of showing that just because something is legal doesn't mean
Mhm.
it's moral. And
Well, I
so,
think
what?
they took some of this from a real world, especially the Romans when they went from in time of war. They had two leaders before the empire. You had they call them counselors. One ruled, and his each day he was the main man in charge. Okay,
Mhm.
Spartans
so
had a similar.
but on wartime they are ultimate power dictators. They're emperors without name. Okay, so when I see what they gave Palpatine, even though he has the title as whatever you want to call him, Prime Minister,
Supreme Chancellor.
Supreme Chancellor, at that time he is Chancellor until the war is over, and that's logical because you know circumstances are that way. But the Jedi put themselves in that position when they tried to say to take it. They fell into the trap. They should have never went that route. And even Yoda says this is a dark path. At that point, they're acting. They're technically going to be acting like Sith.
you're not wrong.
So
Well, guys, um, this was a great discussion about 4 great episodes. And I think at the very end of all of this, I would say this: if you're a Star Wars fan, even if you're an EU diehard, and yes, let's be fair, this does contradict, even before Disney, this did contradict a lot of the EU. Even if you're an EU fan, I would still give this show at least one watch through. From the standpoint of, yes, the EU before the show came out had one way of telling the story, but perhaps here's another telling. And that's kind of the way that I look at Star Wars now beyond the movies. I've said this multiple times before. How I justify both the existence of EU canon and Disney canon is basically see them both as speculation as what could have happened in that time period. Because that also opens up the room for your imagination to fill in the gaps yourself. But that's what works for me. If you have a different way of thinking about it, that's perfectly fine too. So with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and shut it down here. I think we're going to do a Skyrim stream for you, Phil.
well, that's lovely. I'll stick around for it.
So
What
give me
happened to Mass Effect?
Mass Effect.
I was gonna go with Fallout 4.
I can't play just one game straight through. I have to rotate through different games to keep it interesting.
I understand.
So we're going to do some Skyrim tonight. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in about 5 minutes for the Skyrim stream. I need to get something to drink. But just remember, the Force is family. And you know what? This is probably in poor taste, but we're going to play ourselves out by playing this clip. Nate, it's your favorite clip, in memory of everyone that died in that Star Destroyer crash.
Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
See you guys later.
I think the clones would have enjoyed that.